Welcome to the second episode in a Legendarium series about the Roman kingdom. In part 2, A City Anointed with Blood, we will talk about the founding of Rome and the destruction of Remus. In the first episode, we talked about how Rome's reputed founders, Romulus and Remus, overthrew Amulius the usurper in Alba Longa. Afterwards, out of filial piety, they restored their maternal grandfather Numitor to the throne of Alba Longa. Next, they left to build their own city with some restless and landless young men of Alba Longa. They planned their settlement on the Tiber River, which rose from two springs in a beech forest in the Apennine Mountains, which ran down Italy like a rocky spine. In three great zigzags, the Tiber River crossed a plain for 250 miles before emptying into the Mediterranean. But 15 miles from the coast, it wiggled into the shape of the letter S as it wound around a cluster of wooded hills where Romulus and Remus would found their city. These hills overlooked and encircled a wide marshy space crossed by a stream. People in the area mainly tended livestock, moving them upstream to summer pastures and back to the plain during winter. According to Greek mythology, the hero Hercules slew the monster Cacus during his 10th labor. This fire-breathing creature lived on human flesh and dwelled in a cave within one of the hills. Hercules arrived driving a herd of cattle taken from a three-faced giant that he killed in a previous labor. After Cacus seized the finest bulls and dragged them to his cave, Hercules followed the sound of their mooing to find where Cacus dwelled. After entering the cavern, Hercules slew Cacus with his club. Hercules' journeys during the 12 labors, which took him to Iberia, southern Gaul, across the Alps, and into Sicily, made him the protector of Greeks living abroad. In this place, Romulus and Remus planned their settlement. However, the brothers quarreled over the location of their new town. It may sound like a small matter to us, but location mattered very much to animistic peoples, as they believed spirits and gods dwelled in all places and all things, and locating a place in the right area meant the difference between fortune and destruction. Romulus wished to start the city on the Palatine Hill, while Remus preferred the Aventine Hill. To settle their disagreement, they agreed to consult augury, a type of prophecy in which birds are examined and observed to determine what actions or persons the god favors. Each brother prepared a sacred space on their respective hills and began to watch for birds. Remus claimed to have seen 6 vultures, while Romulus said he saw 12 vultures. Romulus asserted that he won by 6 birds, but Remus argued that since he saw his 6 birds first, he had won. The brothers remained at a standstill as Romulus began to dig trenches and build walls around the Palatine Hill. Remus made a mockery of Romulus's wall, growing so bold as to jump over his brother's wall jestingly. There are several versions as to how Remus died on the day of Rome's founding. In Livy's version, Remus simply died after jumping over Romulus's wall, a sign from the gods that Romulus would be king. According to Saint Jerome, one of Romulus's supporters named Fabius murdered Remus for his mockery by throwing a spade at his head. However, most sources claim that Romulus himself murdered his brother Remus on April 21st, 753 BC, the day of Rome's founding. One version even had an elderly Faustulus present on the scene. When he attempted to prevent his foster sons from murdering each other, he found himself caught up in a clash among their supporters and died for his efforts. As calm returned, Romulus realized what he did. He founded his new city upon a heinous crime, which broke one of humanity's most sacred taboos. The rivalry of brothers often featured in ancient mythology. It is seen in the sons of Oedipus, Eteocles, and Polynices, who killed one another in a duel. And in the book of Genesis, Cain murdered Abel soon after the exile from the Garden of Eden. Yet few states claimed fratricide as a foundation myth. Later generations of Romans believed that Remus's blood cursed them with the civil wars of Caesar's era. Filled with grief and remorse, for a time Romulus longed for death, yet anguish soon passed and ambition returned. Romulus mournfully buried his brother, bestowing upon him full funerary honors. Having won the first of many power struggles, Romulus modestly named his city Roma after himself. At its foundation, he yoked a bull and a cow to a plow and drove a deep furrow around the boundary lines. Only from inside it could the city's priests watch for omens in bird sign. This ceremony would be repeated whenever the Romans founded a new colonia or colony town. Now, while the Romans dated April 21st, 753 BC as the founding of their city, it had likely been founded more than a generation before. In its earliest days, Rome would have been indistinguishable from the other Latin towns, taking root throughout the Latium coastal plain. During the time of Romulus, Latium presented a lush and overgrown landscape. Well watered, the vast plain filled with laurel, myrtle, beech, and oak. Everywhere among the woods one found ponds, lakes, lagoons, and streams. Evergreen pine and fir grew on the mountain slopes. Surrounded by wooden palisades, wattle and post villages would be surrounded by farmland where plebeians raised wheat, barley, and millet. Further afield, shepherds kept their flocks in pastures. Rome's location had several distinct advantages. 7 hills on the Tiber granted the first Romans protection. Access to the river allowed them to reach trade routes and salt pans, yet it remained far enough from the coast to avoid an attack by sea. At the time of Rome's supposed founding, the Greek states held the Olympic Games for a generation, and Carthage began its rise to preeminence in northern Africa. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.